In Islam, we pray the Janaza prayer upon the dead people. Salatul Janaza is a fard. It's compulsory, but it's the type of fard is fard kifaya, which means a compulsory act that if other members of the Muslim community already carry it out, then it's no longer compulsory upon the rest of you. It becomes just a sunnah if you want to do it. But if no member of the community does it, then each one of us is answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each member of the Muslim community, if they knew. But if they didn't know, you're not answerable for what you don't know. But if you knew and no member of the Muslim community prayed on the person who is Muslim, then each one of us who knows is accountable. Until members of the community pray on him, 2, 3, 4, doesn't matter. Then the rest of us are okay. And the way we pray the Janaza is without any ruku' and any sujood. I just recall, subhanAllah, a poem that lingers in my head and really affects the heart. But I wish I can say it too because it's in Arabic, but I'll let you, it sounds something like this. It says, وحملون على الأكتاف أربعة من الرجال وخالف من يشيعني. And they carried me on their shoulders, 4 men, and behind me people making dua. And they placed me in the mihrab. وَقَدَّمُونِ إِلَى الْمِحْرَابِ وَانْصَرَفُوا خَلْفَ الْإِمَامِ فَصَلَّ ثُمَّ وَدَّعَنِي. They put me in front of the mihrab, and the imam went behind me, and the people behind him, and he farewelled me, the imam, for the last time. وَصَلُّوا عَلَيَّ صَلَاةً لَا رُكُوعَ لَهَا وَلَا سُجُودَ لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ يَرْحَمُنِي. And they prayed upon me a prayer that did not involve any ruku' or any sujood. So maybe Allah will have mercy upon me. This last prayer, my dear brothers and sisters, is a mercy from Allah. You get to supplicate for the person who has died. And I recall a tabi'i, I don't recall his name though, a tabi'i of the past, of the predecessors of the Salaf Salih, who says, I prayed a Janaza and I didn't know what to say. My heart was, after I made the dua, normal dua, I said, oh Allah, if this man was my my guest, I would be generous to him at my house. Oh Allah, he is now your guest, and you are the most generous. Be generous to him, my Lord. That night, or the next morning, he says, this story goes like this. The people who were at the Janaza raced to this man, and they said to him, Ya akhana, our brother, what did you supplicate yesterday? He said, I said this and that. He said, because we saw him come to us in our dream. And he said his salams to you. For it is because of your dua, Allah surely met him with a generosity. Allahu a'lam. However, the supplication of the living is the only thing that benefits the dead. My dear brothers and sisters, I repeat it again. The supplication of the living is the only thing that can benefit. The supplication of the living benefits the dead. The supplication of the dead cannot benefit the living. And again, the evidence, as we recalled before, if the son of Adam dies, all their actions are cut off, except for 3 things. And even one of these 3 things is a righteous child making dua for him or her, not the other way round. So a person, in other words, it's actually haram to call upon dead people for help, for assistance. You can call upon living people for help, because they can. Calling upon the dead for help, is impossible. It is as though you have put an attribute of Allah into the hands of someone who is impossible to carry out. Any attribute that you put into something impossible and believe that it can help is a form of shirk in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because only Allah can do the impossible. And this is one of the things that some Muslims have fallen into. And the way that shirk began was exactly this way. The people had ancient, great, righteous people who died. And when they died, the people began to remember them in certain rituals. After them, their children came and the shaitan said to them, build some monuments for them. So they built monuments. The next generation that came and said, offer food to these statues on their behalf. So they started offering, and so they became gods worshipped. It's in the Quran, Surah Nuh. Wad, Suwa', Yaghuth, Ya'uq and Nasra. They were the 5 righteous men. They actually lived. They were good people. But the people turned them into saints. They supplicate to them at their graves, and then they turned them into statues until the time of Quraysh came. At the time the Prophet Muhammad, it went all the way to the time of Muhammad ﷺ, and they had these statues. And they still worshipped them, along with other new statues. So this is how shirk developed. When a person makes dua in Janaza, the Janaza prayer is of 4 takbirs. The first one you say Allahu Akbar behind the Imam, and you recite Surah Al-Fatiha. You can recite the opening if you want, Subhanakallahumma. The second takbir, you recite Al-Ibrahimiyya. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallayta, into the end. On the third takbir, you make the dua. And there are several ways, several du'as that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Or if you don't know them, you can make dua of your own. It is preferable to be in Arabic. But if you don't know Arabic at all, and you haven't memorized the dua at all, what do? Some scholars said you stay silent. Others said you can supplicate in your language, because it's not the fard prayer. So you make your dua. Some of the du'as you can make, Allahumma اغفر لميتنا وشاهدنا وغائبنا ذكرنا وأنثانا اللهم من أحييته منا فأحيا على الإيمان ومن توفيته منا فتوفه على الإيمان. Oh Allah, forgive for our dead and for the living. Oh Allah, whoever is living, make them live on Iman. Whoever dies, make them die on Iman. Oh Allah, give him mercy. Oh Allah, and so on. If he is a child, then you make dua in the following way. Oh Allah, make him or her a witness for them on the Day of Judgment and an intercessor. And if it's a baby, especially if it was a fetus in the stomach, then it's not fard to do a janazah prayer for them. But if you do, you're allowed. And you make dua for the parents, not for the child. Allahu Alam, maybe this is because the child, the pen has lifted up away from them. They cannot carry sin. Are women allowed to pray Salat al-Janazah? According to the majority of the scholars, yes. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. For just as she is allowed to pray the normal salat in jama'ah, she is allowed to pray salat al-janazah in jama'ah. But there's one exception. She is not allowed to follow the janazah to the graveyard. This is from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah knows it best, even though we may not understand it fully. But there are some wisdoms behind it. I can mention a few, but the point is, Allah is the one that we should trust. So she cannot follow the janazah to the funeral, to the grave. But there is a difference of opinion among the scholars if the women are allowed to visit the grave afterwards. Allahu A'lam, the opinion I follow is that she can, based on several hadiths, and also the hadith you heard before when the Prophet ﷺ saw the old woman at the grave of her son. He did not tell her to leave. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. If you go on the other opinion, I do not force you and do not impose mine.